Hi, good evening. I am Palm Praise to peace and blessings to you. I do have an evening read for you today. We are going to be coming out of Lies My Teacher Told Me by James Lowen. And currently right now, y'all, we are in chapter number 6, which is entitled John Brown and Abraham Lincoln. The invisibility of anti-racism in American history textbooks. So for take 2 of this chapter, coming to you from Poem Praise 2, without later ado, it reads as such. Pagans' prose is typical of books written during the nadir of race relations during the time period of 1890 to 1940, in parentheses, when most white Americans, including historians, felt that blacks should not have equal rights, end of parentheses, and comes as something of a shock at the beginning of the 21st century. In this rendering, those who fought for black equality had to be wrong-headed. Indeed, the first edition of this textbook came out in 1956, long before the changes wrought by the civil rights movement had any chance to percolate through our culture and influence the writing of our history textbooks. The choice of language from fanatical figure and dubious dealings to fiendish, which is spelled Fiendish, butchery, is hardly objective. One man's stalk is another's walk. Bias is also evident in the choice of details included and omitted. The account throughout makes Northerners the initial aggressor, omitting mention of the earlier murders by pro-slavery Southerners. Actually, free states, being in the majority, had tried to win Kansas democratically and legally. It was pro-slavery forces who had used terror and threats to try to control the state. No reader of Pageant would guess that pro-slavery men had recently killed 5 free state settlers, including the 2 slain in the Lawrence raid. Nor had Brown moved to Kansas with his large family. Rather, he had moved to the Adirondacks, which is spelled Adirondacks, hoping his sons would join him there. But 5 sons and their families instead went to Kansas, hoping to farm in peace. They then asked their father for aid when threatened by their pro-slavery neighbors. Other errors include presumed to be pro-slaverites. They were. And literally hacked to pieces. They weren't. Of all 18 textbooks, another of New Books, Pathways to the Present, is the most sympathetic to Brown, but never goes beyond neutrality. It compactly describes Brown's, Harper's, Ferry raid. And here's a snippet as it describes, okay? On October 16th, 1859, the former Kansas raider John Brown and a small group of men attacked the federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. Brown and his followers hoped to seize the weapons and give them to enslaved people to start a slave uprising. United States troops under the command of Colonel Robert E. Lee cornered and defeated Brown's men. Convicted of treason, Brown was sentenced to be hanged. Just before his execution, he wrote a note that would prove to be all too accurate. I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away, but with blood. Let that sink in for a minute. Let Poem Praise 2 read that twice for you. It says this: I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away, but with blood. Let us continue on. 8 other books, new and older, are negative, although they don't imply that he was crazy. The other 9 are openly hostile. Several textbooks, including 4 of the 6 recent ones, emphasize the claim that no slaves actually joined Brown. Borston and Kelly makes the point at length. The party forcibly freed about 30 slaves, taking these reluctant people with them. Brown and his men retreated to the arsenal. Ironically, the first person to die in the affair, killed by John Brown and his men, was an already freed black gunned down by these liberators. The United States, Daughters of the Confederacy, UDC, would love these accounts because they can't be taken to imply that African Americans had no interest in freedom. The UDC erected a monument in Harper's Ferry to Haywood Shepherd, the free black man referred to by Bornstein and Kelly. At its dedication in 1931, they claimed he was representative of Negroes of the neighborhood who would not take part. But this is bad history. Hannah Gurford and Jean Libby had shown that Brown drew considerable support from enslaved African Americans around Harper's Ferry. His men armed the 30 mentioned by Bornstein and Kelly, including some who came from nearby plantations that the raiders never visited. These newly freed men then stopped the eastbound passenger train, guarded it, helped the raiders find other slave owners, and probably killed an armed white resident of the town who refused to halt when challenged. After the raid, the state indicted 11 of them for these actions. Well, after the raid, local African Americans continued the resistance to slavery that Brown's raid had triggered. Libby notes that many slaves from the area were listed as fugitive in the 1860 census, and the barns of all other jurors of John Brown's trial were burned, a time-honored signal of revolution. Thus, the UDC interpretation that textbooks supply, implying that the slaves themselves were not sympathetic to the cause of abolition, is simply inaccurate. And that does complete this take that I have for you on Poem Praise 2. So stay tuned for our next take, which will be take number 3 here on Poem Praise 2, coming out of The Lies My Teacher Told Me, okay? So if you are not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe at this time. I do thank you for listening to this read to this point. Share and hit that notification bell. You know when Poem Praise 2, is coming with something new for you. I do want for you and your family to be safe, to be well, to be blessed, and it be at thy will. Poem Praise 2. I'll talk and I'll see you later, y'all. All right, till next time. See you later. Peace and blessings. And let us all continue to heal. It be it thy will.